I'm JoBeth Williams, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Damien and Anne.
Howdy, partner. It's me, Anne, of Anne and Damien, back with another episode of You Might Know Her From.
Hi, folks. So glad to hear you this week. It's Damien over here.
I am so excited this week because I got the news on Family Zoom today. My family's been doing like Zoom every Sunday since the rise of the pandemic, and we've actually continued it, which has been very nice. But it's the only time that I really connect with my entire family. And I got the news that my nephew, who gigged as a drummer 2 weeks ago, has another gig coming up as a drummer. He is so good. He's into heavy metal, and I think he is like now in a band with someone who is 19 and 31, and I am very, very into it. He's 16. He's very good. I'm so proud.
Is this that punk band that's led by a woman that you sent me?
Yes, Lauren Stokes. Let me just double check that that's her name, that I got it right. He was like recruited as a drummer, and so I feel like for the first time in my life, I feel like a stage mother, and I'm sort of like experiencing and like the thrill of him being a quote unquote professional musician. Like I'm experiencing it through him because it was something I never could do. And I had a band, and again, that's with quotes around it, when I was a teenager, and I was not good, and I was never good, and we never even gave ourselves a name. But like it's my dream to have been in a band and like played around town. So
it's so cool.
It's so cool. And also they like played a Vaselines cover, like the Nirvana cover of the Vaselines Molly's Lips. They're learning a Green Day song. I feel like I don't know that I'm going to have kids, but I do feel like for the first time, like I understand what it is to like live a dream through a child, and like to project your own passions and like lost opportunities and regret onto a young person. And I was like, this is really unhealthy, but I really just like, I'm like, tell me everything.
Very cool, very into it. Yeah, I always wanted to be in a band. There was always one episode of a sitcom where they suddenly were in a band. I feel like it happened on so many shows, like on Saved by the Bell, on Just the 10 of Us, on Saved by the Bell. I feel like it happened numerous times. Like the girls were in a girl group, but then there was also Zack Attack.
Hot Sunday, Zack Attack. Also, oh my God, the Five Aces when they did Shaboom.
Fucking Tori. Leanna Creel not taking our calls.
Leanna Creel is an out lesbian. That's Tori from Saved by the Bell. And also she was in like Parent Trap 3 because she is a triplet. Happy Halloween. We have a good friend who is a triplet. Bless you, Seth. We love you. But look, I come from a long line of twins. My mom is a twin. Her mom had 2 sets of twins. My grandfather was an identical twin. Twins are terrifying. Triplets are even scarier.
That's facts. That's facts. So, folks, hello and welcome. If this is the first time you're listening to our show, this is what we do here. We talk about twins, triplets, other multiple births. We talk about pop culture, current events, or things that are definitely not current, but that we are interested in. Before we started recording today, Anne said, well, I have some things on my list, but I don't want to retread. And I said, retread what? I said, the whole purpose of this podcast is that we only talk about things that we care about. It's like 7 things. It's like actresses and then like 7 other topics.
Yeah.
Speaking of things we normally are retreading here, I just wanted to mention, I thought it was worth mentioning that Dancing with the Stars this season is very good.
Yes. I did watch this past week's episode at your recommendation. Once you told me it was Grease Week, I said, I'm recording on Fubo.
And so that Grease Week was just really satisfying for these old bones. I was very heartbroken that my friend Mel C went home. I actually voted for her because I got concerned.
I love you. She looked devastated, by the way. She looked like literally devastated. And it was hearkening back to like our episode with Anne H, where she talked about like getting herself amped up to go on Dancing with the Stars only to be like voted off. And of course, it's not just the audience voting. It's also the producers who get to ultimately decide like who stays or goes, unless probably it's a landslide and they're like, oh, turns out the audience loves, you know, like Mario Lopez, let's keep him on board. But like ultimately they decided to let Anne H go, and she was fucking pissed. And Mel C looked so sad.
She didn't get saved. Like the person who got saved was, what's her name?
I didn't even know
Laughlin's daughter.
Oh, sick. That person. Oh my God. She's like an influencer. Yeah. She was like terrible. I couldn't get over the fact that Tyra Banks is not good at her job. And, you know, I love her. I love Tyra Banks.
Same.
so much. This is not shitting on her. It's really just that, like, she literally opened the show and said, I've never seen Grease. I saw it for the first time last night. Just lie. Just lie. You don't have to say that.
What's amazing about Tyra is, I love Tom Bergeron so much.
We love him here.
One of the few men in the biz that I love. And he was so good and gracious when he, like, stepped back from the show and Tyra became the new host. But she just hasn't gotten any better. And it's like constantly watching her trip over words and trying to figure out ways to
calling people by the wrong name.
I'm so sorry. Like mispronouncing their name and being like, sorry. Like she'll be like, Melora Hardon. I'm sorry, Hard. And it's like
she called her Mora. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that. I felt like the JoJo Siwa, she hasn't been on L Word Generation Q yet, and I just feel like, I'm kind of into JoJo Siwa now. Who knew?
I love JoJo Siwa. Ever since she came out, I didn't know who she was until I watched Drag Race Canada and Lemon did JoJo Siwa on Snatch Game. And I was like, do I know who this is? And then I Googled it and I was like, maybe vaguely, but not really. Then I watched a series of videos and I was like, oh, she lives a psychotic life. She lives in like this huge mansion by herself and it's like full of candy. She lives in like a mansion made of candy. But then she fell in love with her best friend, and whether or not I thought it was like promotional or whatever, I was like, okay, I'm on board with this. And then I watched her and I'm telling you, that dance she did to the reprise of Look at Me, I'm Sandra Dee, I cried. It was very good. There's something happening with her and her dance partner, who's a woman. They're the first
Jenna and JoJo are gay
couple.
Yeah.
And Jenna, is that her name?
Yeah.
Jenna is like feeling JoJo. I think JoJo is like looking up to her as like an older sister, but like sexually, which is like how I thought of all of my babysitters. Like I see the look that she's giving Jenna and I was like, there is really something happening. And then their dance was extremely intimate. I loved it.
She's also very good, like a good dancer. Also her body, like she's like very athletic.
I mean, she was a dancer. That's like, she was on dance.
I mean, Mel C's also on this. There's like 7 people on there who used to be in dance groups.
But I was into Mel C like not being the best dancer.
Totally.
I love her. But then I was like, well, I guess she didn't have to do like hard dancing as the Spice Girls. Like the Spice Girls like did step touches, which is why I loved them.
Totally.
And then she was never required to be really like actively sexy the way that like Ginger was or Baby was. And like I guess Posh was supposed to be sexy, but I didn't get it. Like the other 4, Scary too, was like very sexy. Like all of them were sexy, but like Mel C was not required to be sexy. She just like had to look good.
And she was like a tomboy was like part of her bit, which is obviously, that's a little different when you're then having to perform like femininity for ballroom dancing.
She looked so uncomfortable and I felt for her because I feel like that would be how I would feel exactly if I was like asked to like put on a ball gown and like be sexy.
Speaking of sexy folks, you're going to love this transition.
Here we go.
It's episode 99, which means that next week is episode 100. We are so excited we're excited for this week's episode, but we're so excited to be getting to 100 episodes. This was once just a glimmer in our eye where we would get drunk at bars and say, like, we should do a podcast where we interview character actresses. Like, that would be our thing. So here we are, 100 episodes in, doing it. We're very excited for next week, and we hope that if you like what we've been doing, if you've been following our journey and this podcast, and I think we're really getting quite good at it, that you will leave us a review. It is the best thing that you can do for us to get to 200 and so on, and do live shows and hopefully tour the world and interview the likes of whatever character actors you love wherever you live.
Miriam Margolyes, we're coming for you. Or hop in the pond. Take our calls.
So please leave us a review and stay tuned for episode 100.
I just have to put a little teaser out there that it is somebody that we have talked about multiple times on this very show. We bring this person up on the regular. So, it's Halloween week. We've got a Halloween-worthy guest for you. We had one of the best chats we've had in a while with the great JoBeth Williams, who was a total delight, really game, has been in 1,000 things, and I feel like gave us some tea on some particulars that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, what was so fun in listening back to this episode was just every sort of question we threw at JoBeth or every credit that we brought up, she had some anecdote about it. And, obviously, like, she has had such a storied career, but she really had an amazing recall to be like, oh, here's a story from the set of Kramer vs. Kramer, and here's a story about Kevin Costner on the set of The Big Chill, and et cetera, et cetera. And just like it went on and on and on, and it was really fun. And I felt like she was seeing our insanity, accepting it, and said, okay, I'll play ball with you guys.
Yeah, and let's be honest, she's Oscar nominated for directing a short, and she chose the actresses involved, and they included Mercedes Ruehl and Veronica Cartwright.
And Annette O'Toole.
This is our kind of woman. JoBeth was our cup of motherfucking tea.
You might know her from The Big Chill,
Kramer versus Kramer,
American Dreamer,
Wyatt Earp,
Frasier,
Stir Crazy,
Jungle to Jungle,
Dexter,
Poltergeist,
and Poltergeist II, The Other Side. Big day for us because we are here with Emmy-nominated actress and Oscar-nominated director, JoBeth Williams. JoBeth, welcome to You Might Know Her From.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're so thrilled to learn that despite a massive career in film and TV, you consider yourself a theater person at heart. So for our listeners, you did theater at Brown and at Trinity Rep, and then we discovered that in 1974 you starred as Polly Peachum in the Williamstown theater production of the Threepenny Opera opposite Raúl Juliá as Mac the Knife. This is truly badass to us. Can you share a little something about that production, and in particular that summer you spent at Williamstown, where you apparently also did Juno and the Paycock and Ah Wilderness?
It was an amazing summer because Williamstown is it's like summer camp for actors, and it's so beautiful up there. And I was, in my early 20s, and I was starring up as at Raúl Juliá, which was huge. I couldn't believe it. And we just had so much fun. Donna McKechnie was in that production, Austin Pendleton, Louis Beecham, Virginia Vestoff. It was just a wonderful production. So I had so much fun. And I got to sing every night with Raúl, who was such a gentleman. And then after the show, we would all play poker together. We were all living in a big house on campus of the Williams College. And Raúl and his friend Jose Perez and a bunch of us would play poker every night. And for some reason that summer, I won a lot. And so Raúl and his friend Jose would get so mad, and they called me Texas Beth because I'm from Houston. And Raúl would say, "Texas Beth, how can you win night after night? I just don't understand it." And it was just great. And then I did Ah Wilderness, which is such a sweet, lovely play, playing the young ingenue. And then a new musical of Juno and the Paycock with Geraldine Fitzgerald and Milo O'Shea. So it was a really kind of star-studded summer for me, a little ingenue just starting out.
It's incredible. You have these long lists of theater credits. You've also done Summer and Smoke, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Antony and Cleopatra, and more recently things like Other Desert Cities and The Quality of Life, so many other theater credits. So as we're sort of easing back into somewhat of normal life, are you itching to get back on stage when the theater reopens? Are there dream roles? Do you have goals of coming to New York to do Broadway ever?
Well, I love working in New York, and I've never done actually Broadway. I've only done off-Broadway. But theater is my first love. I did it in high school. That's where I learned to want to really do it, to be an actress, to be able to do the juicy stuff. At that time, I'd always looked at movie stars and thought, oh, that must be amazing. But I never said to myself, I'm going to be a movie star. I'm going to LA. I'm going to, do movies and television. I love theater, and I was so happy doing it.
So, JoBeth, we know you from, as you mentioned, 30-plus films, classic films like Kramer vs. Kramer, Poltergeist, and The Big Chill. But something that Anne and I really want to talk to you about is your star turn as a housewife turned romance novelist heroine in 1984's American Dreamer.
Oh,
so this film, you're doing all the heavy lifting. You're playing dual characters. You have this great montage where you're wearing all of this like insane couture, like Mugler and Dior. So having co-starred in all of these like prestige films, what was it like to headline a romantic comedy on location in Paris? Did it feel like a shift in your career?
Oh, it's just a terrible, terrible situation. There I was, stuck in Paris. It was so much fun. It was unbelievable. It was like my dream when I was a little girl and I watched Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday, and I thought, oh my gosh, actresses get to go real places and shoot real movies. And I've been shooting stuff in Kansas and Wyoming, no offense, very nice states, but this was Paris. And there was that great montage of me going out of Chanel and into Givenchy and wearing all these great clothes, beautiful clothes. And it was just great fun until I had to do a scene where I had to fall into a fountain, an outdoor fountain in front of the George Cinq Hotel. And it was December. And I was wearing a heavy fur coat and an evening gown. And I had to fall into the fountain like 3 or 4 times, get out, freezing because it was like 20 degrees outside. They had to keep the water cold so it wouldn't steam, run me into the George Cinq, into a hotel room, dry me off, put me in another version of the same costume and go out and do it all these times. And I thought, okay, so this is the glamorous life that I was really looking for. But it was great. It was so much fun. And I still have to this day people on Twitter and in chat rooms and stuff who say, my girlfriends and I get together and we watch American Dreamer just for fun because it makes us happy. And that makes me happy because I really enjoyed making it.
Yeah, it's a total romp. So we were trying to connect the dots between, American Dreamer and the 1992 role that you did opposite George Segal, Me, Myself, and I, where you play a woman with multiple personalities. Like, was there any part of American Dreamer that prepared you for playing these multiple roles in that comedy?
Where did you see that?
It's impossible to find. You can only find clips of it online. I literally looked. I called my friend that gets bootlegs for me, and I said, can you find this film for me? He said, I cannot find it. It's impossible to find.
Yeah, it was a low-budget movie. Pablo Ferro was the director. And George, who is a genius. I mean, He's a genius. And he and I just would have a romp. When I first came out in that, there was a red costume where I was wearing what was actually a beaded curtain, like we used to hang across the doors in the 60s, across my head and down as a cape. And I had so much fun playing that part. I'll tell you where I got inspiration was Grey Gardens.
Okay, thank you. It's in my notes. I said, are you doing Little Edie? Because I can't find the whole film, but I was like, I swear to God, JoBeth Williams is giving me Little Edie and there's no record of it on the internet. Okay, tell me everything.
Yes, so I had seen Grey Gardens, the documentary, and, she would take sweaters and tie them around her head.
You got the brooch, too. You did the brooch.
Yes, the brooch, and I stole it directly from Little Edie. And Pablo said, okay, so it needs to be 3 very different personalities. And so I just thought that I could just be Little Edie and put my brooch on my head and wear my curtain. And I sort of did a lot of posing. And I was playing a very paranoid woman, so I was always listening to George through my wall. We shared walls,
Yeah.
And talking to myself and yelling at him and saying, I'm calling the army to get you out. And then, of course, we have an affair. And then at the end, I got to be a guy. And there was a shot of me, and I tried to channel David Bowie. I kind of they put me in a wig and I kind of slicked it back and I wore a suit and a tie and I was very kind of rock and roll hipster guy.
Yeah.
So that was crazy and fun. And yes, I certainly Rebecca Ryan from American Dreamer helped me prepare, if you will, for playing 3 crazy people in that one. Yeah.
You starred opposite a lot of comedy men like Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor and Stir Crazy and Billy Crystal and Alan King in Memories of Me. And it was really great to see you act opposite so many of these like male comedian icons. But if you could have done a buddy comedy with a funny woman of that era, who would it have been?
Goldie Hawn. I know her a little bit, and I've always loved her. And Private Benjamin, to me, is just such a consummate, truly funny female character. And at that time, I think that's who I would have picked. We didn't have Tina Fey. We didn't have Amy Poehler. I mean, we had a lot of great, funny women, but I just happen to love Goldie.
Yeah. Okay, so backtracking a little bit. You had, of course, an incredibly memorable scene in your first film, Kramer versus Kramer, where you appear nude in front of Dustin Hoffman's kid. You were so good in that brief moment. Going back to revisit that, it was so funny. You're covering yourself up, and there's still even a little bit of you exposed. But you've said that this scene sort of opened so many doors for you in Hollywood. Can you say, what sort of roles were you offered following Kramer versus Kramer? And looking back, would you do it all over again?
Well, looking back, there is no question I would do it all over again because it basically kick-started my movie career. That was the first movie I'd ever made. You know, I got stir-crazy from that movie. It was very hard to shoot that scene. I mean, I was basically a theater person. I had never been nude on stage. I had had the back of my nightgown ripped, so I guess I was sort of partially nude in the back, but I had never done anything like that. And when I read the script, I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can do it. But it was such a great opportunity. And I lost weight. I was pretty skinny, but I lost more weight because you worry about, oh, you got to look perfect. You got to look fabulous. And it was very hard to do. But I have to say that Dustin was very helpful. When we went to shoot, we started out in bed under the covers. And of course, I had to be naked because I get up naked and walk out of the bedroom. And Dustin said, well, I'll be naked too. And I said, well, I'm not sure that's going to really make me less nervous.
So method. You were like, I'm good.
But so I said, he's Dustin Hoffman, whatever. So we get under the covers. And we're getting ready to roll the first take. And he takes my hand and he pulls it over towards him. And I go, oh, God, what is he doing? And he was wearing a feather boa jockstrap that had feathers on it that were sort of everywhere. And I went, what the hell is that? And he threw back the covers. And he jumped out in this orange feather boa jockstrap in front of the whole crew. And of course, everybody laughed and clapped, and it really broke the ice. And I really actually was very thankful to him for doing that, because then when I had to, when we started the scene and I had to get up, and it was, like jumping into a freezing swimming pool because you're stark naked in front of a crew of mostly men.
Right.
And then finally, I did it a few times, and it was kind of like wearing a costume until I had to do the hall scene with the little boy who was 5 at the time, Justin Henry. And I was worried I would scar him for life. Here's this skinny woman in glasses standing naked in front of me. I just, why? And his mom sat him down and said, Justin, so you're doing this scene, and JoBeth is not going to be wearing any clothes. And she said, I don't know, how do you feel about that? He said, well, I don't know, Mom, she's awful skinny. So, he was a critic at 5, which I really appreciated. But eventually that scene began to happen pretty easily to me. And they did clear the set every time of people who didn't have to absolutely be there. But it's not easy to do nude scenes. It's really not.
Yeah, that one, though, you were very good on it. Very good.
It was fun for me because it was a funny scene.
Yeah.
And so, so I felt that I could use the nudity to sort of increase my terror, the terror of the character.
Okay, so JoBeth, one of your most high-profile roles is as Karen in Lawrence Kasdan's 1983 film The Big Chill, with an all-star ensemble featuring Glenn Close, Jeff Goldblum, Meg Tilly, William Hurt, Tom Berenger, Kevin Kline, and former guest of this show, Mary Kay Place. With 3 weeks of rehearsal time, which I think is maybe unheard of in Hollywood, the film went on to get 3 Oscar nominations, 2 successful soundtracks, and then, of course, it's just like pop culture canon. Like, y'all in the kitchen making dinner, listening to Motown is iconic. When you were filming it, did it feel like in some way you were breaking the mold?
Well, Nobody wanted to make that movie. 7 studios turned down the script of The Big Chill. They said, nothing happens. They're just people sitting around talking. Nobody wants to see that. So it was very hard for Larry Kasdan to get it made. So we were just, glad that Johnny Carson's production company and I think it was Warner Brothers were willing to, maybe Columbia, were willing to do it. And then they wouldn't give him the full amount of money that he wanted for a longer shooting period. But they would give him the pay for us with no crew for a rehearsal period, which is why we had 4 weeks rehearsal, 2 weeks in Los Angeles and 2 weeks in Atlanta, which none of us had ever done. It was only, I think, my third movie, or my fourth movie, I guess. And nobody had that. But what it did was we did we would get together and do a lot of improvisation as our younger selves when we were in college to help us find our connections as a group. So by the time we got to Atlanta, we still had 2 weeks there, and we were able to go to the actual house where the flashbacks, which were cut, but where they were shot with Kevin Costner, who is, as you know, bless his heart, never had a career after that because Larry Kasdan cut him. However, be that as it may, we did rehearse in that house. One night we completely improvised in character. We all cooked a meal together. Larry wasn't there. Our director wasn't there. It was just the script supervisor sort of making some notes. But we did whatever we wanted. And it was so much fun. We really got to know each other so that we were truly friends and a true acting ensemble by the time we went to Beaufort, South Carolina to shoot the main part of the movie. Now, we had no idea that we were making a movie that would ever be considered iconic or that would ever, have any kind of life at all, because there hadn't been any interest in it. But we really loved what we were doing. We enjoyed being together, being with each other. And we had a lot of fun, and we knew it was going to be an interesting movie. We thought it would be an artsy little film that maybe a few people would see, and then it would not be seen.
Was Meg Tilly with y'all when you were doing the flashback scenes and in the rehearsals, since she's not really part of the friend group? Was she part of that crew in rehearsal?
I don't think she was.
I was just curious.
Don't think she was. I'm trying to remember, but I don't think she was part of that because she was the outsider when we shot in Beaufort. She had not been part of our group. She was too young. So no, I don't think she was. And I knew Kevin Kline because he and I had briefly dated in New York before. And he had dated Glenn Close for 6 months at one point. So they knew each other.
Oh, this was all in the family. Okay.
And Bill Hurt and Glennie knew each other because Mary Hurt was Glenn's best friend, and she was had been married to Bill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It was a small world.
Did Larry Kasdan know all of this? Was any of this part of the casting, you think, or it really was just happenstance?
No, he actually was surprised. What I found out later was that he had written my part for me, with me in mind. I still had to audition for it.
That's terrible.
And he had written Jeff Goldblum's role with Jeff in mind. And Jeff still had to audition for it. And it turns out both Glenn and I wanted to play Mary Kay's part. And Larry said, no, you can't. You can't. I wrote your part for you. I said, I don't want to be Karen. And, the Karen wasn't even a thing then, but I was definitely a Karen. He said, no, I saw you in Poltergeist, and I want you, this is the role for you. So, and I didn't know Glennie wanted it, but she did too. Isn't that funny?
It's wild.
Let's talk about Karen and go with me on this journey, JoBeth. So Karen and Tom Berenger's Sam have this back and forth in the house. He rejects her because he claims that his own marriage imploded, or failed rather, due to boredom, and he doesn't wish that, I guess, upon them. But then they have sex, and then Karen ultimately returns home to her unhappy marriage and her husband. watching this film as a young person and like being very obsessed with it, I remember how tortured and like unethical all of that felt. And now, as an almost 40-year-old, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, I understand it. I'm curious, like, did your understanding of Karen and her marriage and that relationship, like, did it evolve? Did you get it then? Does it feel different now in hindsight?
Well, my problem was I just didn't really like her very much. And I totally related to,
That's so funny.
Mary Kay's situation of wanting a career but wanting a baby, you know, because I was a career woman and I was involved with the man I'm still married to. We weren't married then, and I knew I wanted to have kids, and so that was a real thing to me. And here was Karen, who had, you know, kids and a husband and all of that, and was kind of a boring housewife to me. So, but I did understand, what I did understand about her was that kind of the unfulfilled college attraction. And he always pretended or acted like he wanted me, but I was involved with other people, and so it didn't happen. So I had carried this idea that he had secretly been in love with me, and now, of course, he's famous. So, of course, it's very attractive. And, of course, I come there, I think, specifically thinking, if he's there, I'm finally going to do something about it. So I could relate to that. I could relate to that. And I think that the character ends up going back to Richard because she knows she's not going to run away from her family to be with him, and he's not going to want to be with me. I'm a woman with a lot of baggage. It was just what it was. It was a fling, a sort of acting out of the fantasy that we had all these years about each other.
You and Tom Berenger look so beautiful. It's just like, oh, I was very I rewatched it and I was very swept up in it all over again.
Well, we were young.
It sounds like you all were really a crew. Was Kevin Costner part of that because he had been in some of the flashbacks? Was he like in the mix with all of you doing those rehearsals? Because you then went on to work with him and Larry in Wyatt Earp, so right. Obviously there's some relationship there. Like, yeah, was he in the mix?
Kevin was definitely there. He was with us in Beaufort. We may have actually shot one or two of the flashback scenes in Beaufort, too. I can't remember for sure. But we may have shot the bedroom scene, a couple of bedroom scenes there. And Kevin was around with us, and he was, you know, playing with us. And he tells a very funny story that on the night when we all were improvising and making a dinner together, Glennie and Kevin Kline decided to go for a walk, and there was a 7-Eleven down the road, and so they said, we'll go down and get this. So Costner, because, you know, they were his triangle in the movie, he sort of tagged along with them. And he was so in awe of us. He was younger than we were, and he said of all these actors and how you could improvise together. And he just thought we were amazing, and we'd get into character, and you just wouldn't break character. And he said, we walked into the 7-Eleven, and the first thing that Kevin and Glenn did was go to the magazine stand. And Kevin took out a Variety to see the review of Pirates of Penzance that he had been in. And Glenn grabbed a magazine that was talking about Garp, which she had been in. And he said, I don't know, I didn't understand it. They were these characters, and suddenly they were just actors, reading about themselves.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I always love that story.
Who was your go-to from that group of people? Is there someone still from that crew that you're close with?
Well, yes, Mary Kay and Glenn, close. I talk to or see, not real often, but we do all communicate. I haven't seen Bill Hurt in a long time. Kevin Kline I see sometimes, but rarely, because he's mostly in New York.
Yeah.
But the girls have sort of stayed in touch. We got to be real. We roomed together in Beaufort, so we all got to be real good friends.
Of course, JoBeth, you play Diane, the matriarch of the Freeling family in the 1982 iconic horror film Poltergeist, directed by Tobe Hooper and co-written and co-produced by Steven Spielberg. So you were coming off of the high-profile drama that was Kramer versus Kramer. Was there any part of you that was hesitant to sign on to this horror film as one of your first big leading roles?
Yes. I remember because I had done Kramer, I had done The Dogs of War with Chris Christopherson, which several of my scenes got cut from. That movie was cut way down because it was very long. And I had done Stir Crazy with, Sidney Poitier directing.
Right.
And so I got a call from my agent. I was still living in New York, and I remember they said, we've got this horror movie called Poltergeist. They're interested in you. Are you interested in reading it? And I said, oh, no, I don't want to do a horror movie. I just don't, I'm not crazy about them, and I feel it's kind of beneath me was what I was thinking. And then they said, well, it's being produced by Steven Spielberg. And I went, okay, send it to me. Yeah, I'll read it. And I read it, and I actually thought it was a really good script. And the fact that Spielberg was involved made it a whole different thing. And, it ended up being a big hit. I was glad I did it.
Yeah.
There's this little piece of trivia that says that, so your character Diane swims in the pool and is surrounded by skeletons in the first film. The trivia is that allegedly these were real skeletons and Spielberg and the rest of the crew didn't tell you until after this scene was shot. Is this true? And if so, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, that's what I said. What the fuck? No, I didn't know it. I thought they were prop skeletons. I assumed they were made of plastic or something.
Of course you would assume that.
And nobody told me. I mean, I don't know that it was deliberate, but it may have been because I was nervous about getting in that muddy swimming pool anyway, not because of the skeletons or even the mud, which was made with peat and smell like dog crap. What made me nervous were the huge lights that were put up around the big pool of mud in the studio. And I was afraid that they might fall in and electrocute me, frankly. Oh. And so I said to Stephen, I'm really nervous. Are those lights safe? And he said, well, they're DC, not AC, and they're really safe. He said, here, I'll get in with you if you're that nervous. And he did. He put on waders, and he went and he stood in the shallow end, granted. And it did make me feel better. But I had no idea about the skeletons until the prop guy told me. I ran into him. It was, I think, a couple of years later. And I said, wow, you guys made all those skeletons. He said, oh, no, we didn't. That would have been way too expensive. He said, those were real skeletons.
Where the hell do you get real skeletons? What?
No, you buy them. You buy them. And I think he said they bought some of them from India.
Oh, my.
Oh, this is disturbing. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, I survived.
Yes, you did.
But it was very weird. I mean,
my God.
It was just a strange thing.
So in Poltergeist 2, you got to do a lot of, I will say, probably less horrible things than swimming in a muddy sea of skeletons, but you did get to watch Craig T. Nelson puke up this amphibious demon. You went spelunking with Zelda Rubinstein, and you saw your son consumed by the metal from his own braces. So, JoBeth, what was the worst, most grueling, physically demanding, weird-ass day on the set of Poltergeist 2?
Well, fortunately, those effects were put in later, so I didn't actually see the braces crawl across his face. But it was still, first of all, Julian Beck, who was well known in the theater community, played the old man, the scary old man.
Very scary, yeah.
And he was very gaunt. And he and his wife had started the Living Theater, which was this very out there avant-garde theater group that I had heard of and had actually seen perform in the late 60s when I was in college. So I was somewhat in awe of him. Well, he was very ill. with cancer, and he died only like 3 or 4 months after we finished. So the scariest thing for me was watching Julian, who was still a pro and, still would get out there and play this sort of horrible, very frightening part fully, really fully. That was one of the hardest things for me on that production. But it wasn't nearly, the first one really was brutal. The whole revolving set where I had to slide across the ceiling. I remember we did about 50 takes, and my elbows and knees were bleeding from going across the ceiling, which they had reproduced exactly as a cottage cheese ceiling, just like the one on the set. So I was scraped up, I was bleeding, and I got off and I said to Stephen, I'm bleeding. And he said, oh, it's fine. We'll wipe it off. They'll never see it. It'll never show. I said, well, I rest much easier. Thank you, Stephen, for your compassion. That the first one was really so exhausting. It was by far and away the hardest thing I've ever shot.
Can you tell us anything about one of our all-time faves, Zelda Rubinstein? Is there any tidbit you can tell us about Zelda?
She always had very tall, handsome boyfriends. And I mean tall, like 6'5".
Good for her.
It was amazing. And these guys would come on the set, and Zelda would, be at waist level. Maybe there was something in there.
Right.
Good. And you said multiple too, so she wasn't like one consistent tall boyfriend.
Well, she had one guy, and then I remember maybe it was later after we'd shot, and I ran into her with another very tall, good-looking guy. And I always found that fascinating.
I love it.
Good for her.
Okay, so many actresses are associated with horror franchises. Jamie Lee Curtis with Halloween, Neve Campbell with Scream, Sigourney Weaver with Alien. So at this point, there are 4 Poltergeist films, and there was this 90s TV series. Do you feel any sense of ownership over the franchise, or feel any type of way of not being part of that 2015 remake?
When they said they were going to remake it, I kind of thought, well, that makes sense. It was a big hit. But I thought, it's interesting because that movie was kind of iconic. And I thought, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with it. And I got a call from, it was Sam
Rockwell.
Rockwell called me before they started shooting. And he said, I just want to tell you that Rose and I, are so honored to be able to walk in your and Craig's footsteps. And I want you to know that we are never going to try and imitate you in any way. The story will be somewhat different, but we also don't feel that we'll ever be what you guys did. And we just feel very lucky that we're able to do this. And I was so honored and moved. I thought that was really a classy thing to do. And I did not feel, it's funny because I didn't go see it. I didn't see it, but I didn't feel that proprietary about that character. I guess it had been so long.
Yeah.
And I didn't do the third one. I didn't want to do the third one. So it was just the first 2. But I thought it was interesting that they were remaking it and that they did that series too in Canada. So, everybody loves a good scare, I guess.
Okay, JoBeth, you were Oscar nominated for directing your 1994 short film On Hope, which was written by Lynn Mamet and starred Mercedes Ruehl, Annette O'Toole, and Veronica Cartwright. This is very cool. What was the impetus for your foray into directing, and did you choose those women specifically for the project?
Yes, and yes. I had wanted to direct for a while. I've always been kind of bossy by nature. When I was a kid, I used to put on little productions with the neighborhood kids. But I, of course, would direct them all and star in them. I was an only child. But I was fascinated with directing, and I'm married to a director, and he's a really wonderful director. And he really knows how actors work. And I had worked with a number of directors, frankly, who don't know how actors work. I've worked with some brilliant directors who totally knew how to work with actors. But I have worked with some who didn't. And I just thought, this is something I'd really like to try. And Lynn Mamet was a friend of mine, and she had written a lot of short stories that I had read. And then Showtime had decided to do a series called Directed By, with actors directing short films, actors who had not directed before but had always wanted to. And so there was this great opportunity, and Lynn had a story I loved on Hope, and she wrote it into a screenplay, and we presented it to Showtime, and they said, sure, we'll do it. And they gave us, some money. And I wanted Mercedes because she's such a genius, and I thought she'd be great in that role. And I wanted Annette O'Toole because she has a fragility that I thought was so right for that part. And then I called on friends, Veronica, Alan Rosenberg, Ray Baker, and I just had a lot of luck. And I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved doing everything. And in fact, I remember I had spoken to Kevin Costner when I got the gig, and I said, I'm going to be directing. I'm really nervous. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Kevin had done Dances with Wolves, and he said, he said, it's going to be really scary. He said, the first shot, you're going to think you know absolutely nothing. And he said, and after the first shot, you'll realize how much you know. That from all the years that you have been on the other side of the camera, you have been aware of what was going on and how things work and, what people's roles are and how they make a production come together. And he said, that's going to come to you. And I had done a movie called Switch, directed by Blake Edwards. I loved working with Blake. It was so much fun. And after a few weeks when we'd be shooting, he said, have you ever thought of directing? And I said, well, yeah, I've thought about it. He said, well, you could do it. He said, you should do it. I said, well, I don't know that much about shooting, cameras. And he said, you get a great DP, you get great people around you who know how to do that. And he said, and it'll work. He said, you really need to do it. So that was part of the impetus, was his sort of encouragement.
JoBeth, we've reached the part of the show that we like to call the rapid fire. It's rapid fire for Damien and I. You can take as much time as you need. It just allows us to have we're not going to have any segues.
Okay.
JoBeth, you are now President Emeritus of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation and were one-time chair of the SAG Awards, one of my favorite award shows of all time. How do you choose the actors who are going to be highlighted at the top of the ceremony who say, I'm JoBeth Williams and I'm an actor? Also, can the SAG Awards just serve more booze and become the new Golden Globes?
These are great questions. I'm still chairman of the SAG Awards show committee. I'm honored to say, because I love that show too, and I think it's one of the best, if not the best, because it's short, and actors love being there. They just love being there, and we want contrast and very interesting people who will have different kinds of stories to tell at the beginning. That's personally my favorite part of the show, are those stories.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And I thought it interesting that the Oscars this year took from us, and
yes, they did.
And with Laura Dern and everybody sort of talking about themselves, the nominees and everything, and telling stories about them and their character and all of that. I thought that was very interesting. So that's something we definitely will keep as a major part of our show.
You play Sylvester Stallone's boss and love interest in the 1992 comedy Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, also starring Estelle Getty. JoBeth, which of those two icons were you more excited to work with, and which one was more demanding?
I was excited, by both, because I had adored Estelle in her show, and of course I admired Stallone, and I thought it would be actually a lot of fun to work with him, because I had heard that he was funny on the set, and he was funny on the set, and he was very charming. He didn't throw any kind of tantrums or anything that some stars do and that I've personally witnessed. I will not name names, but he was absolutely charming and fun. And I had a scene where I had to slap him. And I have to say, I had a certain amount of enjoyment in playing that scene, just because, he's Rocky. And so the first time I slapped him, he said, "Oh, come on, JoBeth, you can do better than that." And so I slapped him a little harder. He said, No, come on, I really want you to slap me. Come on. So I reared back and wailed the heck out of him. And he kind of reeled back and he went, "Oh my God, I've been hit by bigger, but never faster." So that was a little small moment of triumph for me. But it was fun, and Estelle was delightful. I didn't have that much to do with her. Most of what I did was with Sly. Yeah, it was perhaps not the best movie ever made, but it was fun to make.
Honestly, I love it. I really had a great time. I was like, I'm so enjoying this.
Okay, JoBeth, you played opposite a lot of famous Hollywood dads. So, Fuck, Marry, Kill, Hollywood Dad Edition. Ed O'Neill, who you co-starred with in Dutch. Tim Allen, who you co-starred with in Jungle to Jungle. And Craig T. Nelson, who you co-starred with in Poltergeist, of course. F, Marry, Kill, those three men.
F, Marry, Kill?
You have to choose from those three men. Which one are you going to F? Which one are you going to marry? And which one are you going to kill?
Oh.
You have to choose. The game is called Fuck, Marry, Kill.
Oh, period. Okay. I thought you were describing an actor. I thought it was F, Murray, Kill. And I thought, I don't remember working with him. Which one would I kill? Which one would I marry? And which one would I fuck?
Yes.
Out of those three. And it's Tim, Ed
O'Neill, and Craig.
Hi, this is tough. I never fucked or married any of them.
I can't wait to see which one you're going to kill, though.
Well, there were times on Poltergeist that I wanted to kill Craig. I mean, I loved Craig, but there were times when he and Stephen would have arguments and stuff. I would not marry Craig, but I think he's a lot of fun. But maybe I would kill Craig. Sorry, Craig.
Yeah. It's all good. He's a good sport.
I would not marry Tim Allen, but I could see fucking him.
Okay.
Tim's attractive. Ed O'Neill, also attractive, but I could marry Ed because he's such a nice guy.
All right, I liked following that journey.
I've killed Craig.
He's dead. He's literally dead to us.
Dead to me. I screwed Tim. And, he's very close friends with my husband, so he won't want to hear this playback, probably.
Sure.
And then Ed O'Neill, I've married. Yep. It's a short marriage, but...
Great job.
Okay, JoBeth, you recurred on Private Practice, appeared on Scandal, and then recently guested on Station 19. Be honest, which of these Shondaland shows had the best craft services?
I think I would have to say Private Practice.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was good. Although Scandal's pretty good. I didn't, I only did the one Station 19, so I didn't really get to know their craft service that well.
You had 2 episodes.
Did I? Oh, okay.
Maybe you filmed maybe they spread your scenes out over the course of 2 episodes.
Honestly, sometimes I see the titles of TV shows I've done and I do not remember what that title was. It's really scary.
No, you had a very good, very solid career full of work, so it makes sense.
Okay, so the story goes that you turned down a role in The Natural and that you also turned down the title role in Murphy Brown. So our question is, were you in the room then with the likes of Candice Bergen and Glenn Close? And who was in the room with you in these days? And were there any other roles that got away?
Well, there were certainly roles that I wanted to play that I didn't get offered. I wanted to play the part that Glennie played in Fatal Attraction.
Such a good role.
Yeah, and the director said, no, I could see you as doing the wife, which was Anne.
Oh,
was that Annabeth Gish?
No,
Annabella Sciorra.
No, Scientologist. Anne, Can't say her last name. You know, she's a Scientologist.
Anita Gillette. I
Talking...
can't picture who it is.
No, and she was Alice's mom in The L Word. I can't say her name.
Beautiful. She's a beautiful woman. And I can't.
Ann Archer.
Archer.
Ann Archer.
Thank you, Ann Archer.
There we go. We got there.
It was Ann, which was, I didn't, that wasn't a role I particularly wanted because I felt it was similar to stuff I had done.
Yeah.
The Natural happened, you know, it was originally offered to Glenn, and she got something that she was going to do in Boston. And so they came to me, and I turned it down because I was going to go do American Dreamer. That was when I was going to go do American Dreamer.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Okay.
And so, you know, it was a very tough choice because, of course, The Natural I knew would be a huge movie. It was Redford, but American Dreamer, the role was just so wonderful, and the chance to go to Paris and everything. So I turned it down, and then Glennie did not do the other movie, and they came back to her, and she did The Natural. And then Murphy was written by a friend of mine, Diane English, who I'd been friends with and still am for a number of years at that point. And I knew it was a wonderful script and a wonderful character, but I had just adopted my first son, and I had been trying to have a baby for 7 years and had been through all sorts of infertility treatments and had miscarriages, and it had been a very roller coaster ride for me. And I was working, you know, during that time also. And so when Diane offered me Murphy, I literally had just become a mother, and I thought I couldn't see going to the set every day with my newborn baby. And I couldn't do it. And I was doing mostly movies at that point too, so I wasn't sure that I wanted to do a series.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, of course it was a huge hit, and then I wanted to kill myself and my newborn son. But these things happen.
Right.
You know, more power to her, Candace. She was so great in that show, and I'm sure I would have been great too, but I would have been very different. I don't know. You know, you make choices, you make decisions, and then other things happen in your life, and it wouldn't have been the same life if I had chosen to do that. So
Exactly.
Okay, JoBeth, who's more difficult? An actor turned director like Sidney Poitier, a writer turned director like Larry Kasdan and Robert Benton, or a director turned your husband, Jungle to Jungle?
Oh, definitely Jungle to Jungle. Definitely dealing with my husband as a director. Although I have to say that I met him when he cast me in a play, and we've done 2 plays and a soap and a movie together, and I always love working with him because he is an actor's director par excellence.
I love that.
With Larry Kasdan, it was very interesting because I don't like to over-rehearse for film. I love rehearsing for plays, but I don't like to over-rehearse because I feel that by the time you get on camera, you've lost the kind of improvisatory spark. And Larry rehearsed us. Even after we'd done the improvising, he rehearsed, and he wanted it word perfect. He's a writer, you know, and sometimes I found it hard, a little hard. He wanted everything exactly as he wrote it. He's a genius, and I've worked with him again, and I'm good friends with him, and I love him. But there were times that I felt that we did the scene too many times before we finally started shooting. That was just me. That was just my personal take on how to work. Robert Benton, kindest man in the world, just a lovely man to work with. When we did the nude scene, he did a number of takes, and then he said, let's just do 10 or 15 takes your way. Just do whatever you want. And that, you know, for my first movie, I thought, oh, well, yeah, this must be how everybody works. This is fabulous. Loving this. That's not how everybody works. But Larry also loves actors, too. So there is that. Sidney Poitier, he's such a kind man, such a wonderful man. it was a tough situation on Stir Crazy because Richard was doing things, doing some drugs and stuff, and there were some issues, and it was tough. But Sidney was always a gentleman. He never lost his temper, and I admired him so much. Not only also as an actor, of course, but as a director. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. Okay, so JoBeth, you star in the 1993 unaired sitcom pilot Gloria Vane as a self-centered B-movie actress opposite Harriet Harris and Edward Hibbert. The pilot was directed by Jimmy Burrows and was set in the golden age of Hollywood. The question is, did this gig open doors for your Emmy-nominated role on Frasier that following year?
Yes. I mean, I think it was because they knew me from that. Jimmy knew me, and Kelsey had seen it, and Joe, Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm sure, why they thought of me. I was really sad that pilot didn't go because it was so much fun to do, and it was like nothing else that had been done at that time.
Totally.
And I've always felt that if it were done later, when A&E channel existed and everything, that it would have had a life.
Yeah.
The network showed it in the middle of the country, and they all said, "Why is she such a bitch?" and "Who's Cary Grant?" Because it took place in the 30s and 40s, and they were confused and couldn't relate. So, but it was so much fun to shoot. It was really crazy. And Mark Blum, rest in peace. Lisa Baines, rest in peace, was in it.
Yes,
along with Harriet and Edward, and yeah. It was a great cast, and it was the most expensive sitcom pilot that had ever been shot at that time because of all the 30s sets.
It was lush. The pilot is on YouTube. Please go watch it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was like, I would have watched this show, but you're right. It would be on cable now. It would definitely not be a network sitcom.
Yeah, and it was, it started in black and white outside the Paramount Studios, and they did one shot rolling in, and they rolled me out on a slant board, and I'm screaming, and, I'm a diva. And I guess the people in the Midwest just didn't like my diva.
Okay. JoBeth, I'm a lesbian. We here at this podcast consider ourselves lesbian pop culture historians. Now, there were some very real lesbian vibes at play in the aforementioned Blake Edwards comedy Switch, where you and two other scorned women kill the sleazy man who double-crossed all of you. Stay with us, listeners. He then comes back to life as a woman played by Ellen Barkin, and then you have to help Ellen's character, who is like a dead man inside of her, learn how to perform femininity. There's so much lesbian energy running throughout this film, and you and Ellen even share a kiss. Then she has this whole thing with Lorraine Bracco, who is an out lesbian. How much lesbian and gender role talk was there on set with you and Blake and Ellen? And did you create this whole backstory for your character Myrna, or did you just shoot from the hip?
We mostly shot from the hip, and it's interesting because Blake actually wanted me to audition for the Lorraine Bracco part, but I really wanted to play Myrna. I thought I'd have so much fun with that character, and it was like American Dreamer in a way, she's a rich bitch, and she had all these great clothes, and it was New York, and I thought, and so I had to go in and audition for him for the role that I wanted, and I had to prove it. And he literally followed me out of the audition and said, "You've got this part." He said, "You proved to me that you can do it, and I think you'd be great." So that was great that I got to play the role I wanted. Ellen and I had done another movie together called Desert Bloom some years before, so I knew Ellen. Kissing, all of that. It was we knew each other. We were friends. It was fine.
Yeah.
And Blake, Blake was very interesting because sexuality was very fluid in his eyes and in the way he shot and in the people he used. And I always loved that about him and his stuff. Mm-hmm. So we never really talked about it. I mean, it just was... We played it however we wanted to try it.
Yeah.
I did play do a movie where I played a
Little City.
Exactly.
We're getting there.
Okay.
Tell us about that. You played a lesbian opposite John Bon Jovi.
Yeah, I didn't really have much with John Bon Jovi. Joanna Going was the woman that I had the affair with, and I also had a scene
Penelope
in
Ann
bed
Miller.
with Penelope.
You're like smoking a cigarette, being like, "All right, get out of my bed."
Yeah. I was like that was hilarious shooting that. I remember being under the covers, obviously, giving her a good time. And she's lying there, she's like pretending she's just trying girl on girl. She'd never done it. So she's, her character's just trying it and she's faking all these sounds. And finally I'm just like, honey, I know you're not into this, so let's just skip it. But it was fun. I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed playing the scene where I'm kind of trying to seduce Joanna, who I knew from Wyatt Earp, because I said to the director, so I want to be Warren Beatty here. I just want to be, I come on to every girl, and I had a great time. I really did.
You're a Lothario.
I was a Lothario, exactly, and I really enjoyed it.
JoBeth Williams, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a total pleasure.
It's been so much fun. Thank you. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate that you've seen a lot of things that nobody else has seen. So that's nice.
What a disgusting Halloween reveal that poor JoBeth Williams had to swim in an ocean full of skeletons. When I tell you that would keep me up at night for years, thinking about who are these poor bones that you're swimming with, unethically sourced. I don't know what an ethically sourced skeleton would look like, but honestly, it's incredibly distressing. Number two thing that upset me, it didn't upset me, actually. It just is correct that William Hurt continues to be a problem, and we all know it. We all know it. JoBeth didn't say it. I'm not saying she said it. She said she hasn't spoken to him in years. That sounds about right.
And the third thing you had?
Oh, the third thing I had was really just that Kevin Kline had a very active, good sex life in the 60s and 70s, or in the 70s. So it seems like he dated JoBeth, which I didn't know, Glenn Close for a couple of months, which I thought but didn't know for sure, and then also Patti LuPone. They were
Juilliard
on again,
lovers,
off again,
right?
for 7 years. Yeah, and I was just thinking Kevin Kline really. I don't know that I have strong feelings about him one way or another, but here's the thing: I realize that he is attracted sexually to women that I think are cool. So. Good on him. I think he has good taste because I'm obviously very into JoBeth, Glenn, and Patti LuPone. So I think that speaks to his character that he's fucked a lot of cool women that aren't just vapid idiots.
So these are the things that you were distressed by in the interview. Reveals, we will say. Here are two reveals that made me pleased. The first being, of course, that our fave, Halloween icon Zelda Rubinstein, dated men that were 6'6". That was the most amazing reveal.
So cool.
The most amazing reveal. I really can't get over it.
I love her so much. Yeah, she sounds knew what she wanted.
The second best reveal for me in this interview was we were talking about Fatal Attraction. We were trying to remember who played the other female lead. And folks, you're listening to the interview, so you might not know, we are all looking at each other and she's like, who, it was that beautiful woman. And she's like, Anne. And then my Anne Rodeman is saying Anne, oh yeah, who was it? And I'm yelling names Annabelle Gisiora, Annabeth Gish, whatever. I'm just yelling things. And then Anne is like, yeah, she's a Scientologist. And JoBeth just nodded in the Zoom.
Yes.
And it was, I died. And then of course Anne Rodeman said she plays Alice's mother on the L Word, and that was the thing that got me to Ann Archer.
Very relevant, very topical.
So wait, just a sidebar, is Ann Archer's daughter-in-law, Shelley Miscavige, who is missing? Is that right?
I don't think that's right. Her son is a high up in the church, because that would mean that David Miscavige is her son, which is not true. Her son is a high up that is not David Miscavige.
Oh yeah, Tommy Davis. Okay, sorry. We can.
Tommy, he was my understanding is he is a Scientology henchman.
Yeah, he is. We can scratch this if I don't need to make it about that, but I wanted to.
I'm actually obsessed with Ann Archer, but the Scientology thing is always if we haven't had a Scientologist on this show yet, but if we do, look, we were very close to landing one, we thought, and then They said thanks, but no thanks. Probably because they knew that it would be all I would want to talk about. I would have to ask.
Do you think anyone felt complicated about bringing Ann Archer back on the L Word Generation Q for literally like 2 scenes, and also that's like interesting to me that she did it?
Yeah, I mean, she has got to pay those Scientology dues.
She needs to get clear. Folks, we hope you liked this episode with JoBeth Williams. We sure did.
Honestly, Poltergeist was so fun to revisit, and Poltergeist II I had never seen. I love her work. I think she's so good in everything, and also just is so damn game. So please go dive into a bunch of JoBeth. Also, Switch is one of the wildest movies that I've seen in a really long time, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love a Blake Edwards sexual romp. And darlings, you know what we do here. We are going to give you a little blind item. It's what we do best, where we connect this week's guest, episode 99, to next week's guest, episode 100. That's right, we're going to cross that threshold, and this is a biggie. So, Damien, can you please connect JoBeth Williams to next week's guest using no men at all?
Why, Anne? I'm so glad you asked me. I'm up for the challenge. Yes, I can. JoBeth starred in the aforementioned Poltergeist with our favorite tall man lover, Zelda Rubinstein. Zelda, of course, was a series regular on the TV series Picket Fences with one of our favorites, Kathy Baker.
Yes!
Kathy Baker played against type in a movie I'd argue is Halloween-y. Of course, that is Edward Scissorhands. Also in Edward Scissorhands is Winona Ryder, who I defended for years and years and years to get a comeback, who is the star of Girl Interrupted, with former guest of this show, Jillian Armenante, who starred in one of our favorite shows ever, Judging Amy, with next week's guest. Ooh, lordy, lordy.
I'm sweating getting ready for 100. When I tell you this has been years in the making, we are jumping out of our bones, babies. Ooh, happy Halloween to us. If you want a little bit more a taste of the energy that you're getting here today, which is real wild, follow us on social media. That's at Damien Bellino. That's Damien with an A. And I'm at Rodeman. That's RODEMANNE on all mediums. Find us on LinkedIn. I don't know what to do with it, but you can find us there too.
You might know her from is produced by us. That is Anne Libra Rodeman and Damien Michael Bellino. We also want to thank our consultants at Grumpy Entertainment. That is Jason Jude Hill and Daniel Sears. Without them, we would be lost causes. And all of that precise and crystal clear editing is also by Daniel Sears.
And a shout out to the music that underscores all of our episodes. That's Gang, of course. You can hear them on each episode. You can download and stream them wherever you listen to music. And if you're interested in that trailer where you get to see JoBeth play Little Edie, even though it was clear that we hadn't seen the movie, Me, Myself, and I, it's in the show notes. That's right. We spent a lot of time linking in all of the popular vids in there. Go find them.
All the popular vids?
Oh, boy. All right. You're giving me shit about my language now? You're going to correct my language on air? Oh, boy.
I so loved this episode with JoBeth Williams. I was listening to it before I had put the notes in for the edit, and I was like, wow, this is really great. So I was walking in Morningside Park. I actually stopped as I approached 123rd Street, and I started texting you to say, I just finished listening to JoBeth Williams. I'm so excited to send you my edits. And Ronnie, intern of this show, my daughter, had a pigeon in her mouth. The moment I looked away, I looked at my phone, and when I looked up, she had a pigeon in her fucking mouth. And we've done a lot of training. We've trained with drop a lot, so I was prepared to do it, but I was so like thrown with what was happening. And before I could even do anything, she opened her mouth and it flew away, very Sylvester and Tweety style. And it appeared to be okay, but I did not stop to inspect. I said, you were disgusting. I want to mouthwash your mouth out. And then we went home, and I'm sure she kissed me like 3 hours later.